Welcome students to Student Camps 2022, or exam preparation series. Today we're looking at preparation for the curriculum-based test for science in grade 6. Now, just a few reminders. When preparing for your exams, we want you to remember to use your reasoning skills, and when you're faced with a question, remember to use the information given and correctly interpret the question. Also, in most cases, you may be given many different answer options. So examine your options to choose the most suitable answer, and of course, choose your answer based on evidence. Always analyze and interpret all information given. Okay, so let's get to it. Let's look at our first question. Now, the question given states, which statement completes the definition for overgrazing? So there are some options given, and we want to look at the options. In most cases, you may be given an option that is totally wrong, completely way out. So try to find that option and eliminate it, right? So we have having too many animals on a small piece of land, catching too many animals in an area until very few animals are left, the hunting of animals to the point that no animals are left. Now, which of those statements suggests that the answer is way out? Possibly C. So we can eliminate C. Now we continue to the heavy feeding of animals on vegetation until very little vegetation is left. So which of those answers suggests overgrazing? Certainly D, the heavy feeding of animals on vegetation until very little is left. All right, so we're going to continue to use that approach when we consider the other questions. So the second question says, which is not a suitable recommendation to prevent soil erosion? Now, the word not is very important in that question. So which of those answers do you think is the best one? So for soil erosion, we know that if we use steps, or what we call terracing, it helps to prevent soil erosion, right? We also know that when we cover the land, it helps to prevent the loss of soil. So obviously A and B are correct in terms of preventing soil erosion. Now, which is not a suitable recommendation? Yes, allowing animals to graze on land is certainly not a way to prevent soil erosion. However, draining the water from your soil will help to prevent soil erosion. So our answer is C. Okay, let's look at the third question. Now the third question comes with an image showing a human activity, and so the first task is to look carefully at the image. So let's examine the image, and we can see that the garbage truck is getting rid of waste, and that's solid waste, on a hillside. So what do you think will happen to that solid waste? It will settle, yes, on the land, right? That is indicated in the picture. So we're looking at the most likely effect of this activity. Now, will this activity result in the death of crops on nearby farmlands? Probably highly unlikely, right? Will it result in the loss of trees and other types of vegetation? Possibly. No, that could not be a response. Increase the number of landslides? Well, we're looking at solid waste, so we're not sure. We are almost sure it will not increase the number of landslides. And so our answer will certainly be creating a breeding site for animals, such as your rats and your cockroaches that spread diseases. Okay, now let's look at our fourth question. Now this question provides us with a paragraph with some information as well as a bar graph. And so we have to look carefully at these two pieces of information. It's talking about a healthy ecosystem and the role that trees play. Now looking at the paragraph, what roles do trees play? Let's see. We're told that trees provide us with food, medicine, They purify the air, for example, by trapping dust and remove carbon dioxide, right? And of course, animals need plants and for food, right? And they provide pest control and recreation, right? So the graph shows that there is some relationship between the number of trees removed and asthma cases. So let us look closely at that bar graph. What can we see? In 1970, right, notice the number of trees removed compared to the asthma cases. Now look at 1980. What do you observe? Do you see anything happening to that graph? It seems as if the number of trees removed has increased, yes. And what has happened to the asthma cases? That has also increased. And let's look at 1990. Do we see that happening again? Yes. There is actually a relationship based on this information between the number of trees removed and our increase in asthma cases. Now, this is a question. Which of the following could be a possible cause for the trend observed in the bar graph? So you need to be sure what the trend is. The trend is as the number of trees that are removed increases, right? The number of asthma cases also increases. So by removing trees, which do you think is that cause for that trend? Is it that the trees, the oxygen in the air increases by removing trees? Do you think so? And this leads to an increase in asthma cases? Would asthma cases increase because of an increase in oxygen? Is that plausible? Okay, let's look at option B. Impurities in the air increases, and this leads to an increase in asthma cases. Is that a possibility? That's a possibility. Let's look at C. Airflow is prevented. Can removing trees affect airflow, which will lead to an increase in asthma cases? Probably not directly, yes. What about D? Carbon dioxide in the air decreases, and this leads to an increase in asthma cases. Would a decrease in carbon dioxide lead to an increase in asthma cases? We don't think so. So our answer would certainly be B, because based on the paragraph, we were told that trees help to purify the air. And so removing the trees would cause an increase in the impurities, which would of course affect persons with asthma. Okay, now our final question looks at activities that affect climate change. And we're given some choices, and this one we need to be careful. We're told to use the choices to complete the paragraph. And so we want you to use the context clues provided in the paragraph to help us to choose the most suitable answer. So let's go. Oftentimes, fertilizers used on farms can get washed into nearby rivers. So here we're talking about the effect of the fertilizers on the rivers. This can have a severe effect on the environment, as it can result in what? Would it result in rising sea levels? Probably not. So because we're talking about farms, fertilizers, and rivers, that choice would not be suitable at that point. Would it lead to increased flooding in low-lying communities? Now, remember, we're talking about fertilizers getting washed into rivers. So this may not result in increased flooding. Rising carbon dioxide levels and a resulting temperature change, highly unlikely. And so the loss of fertilizers into rivers could actually lead to death or illness in animals that depend on the river. So notice the context there with the river is actually in the question. So our first answer would be D. Now, the environment can also be harmed when communities and roads are built on hillsides. So notice we're now talking about hillsides, right? as this may cause, and let's look. When we build on hillsides, right, we know that water washed from hillsides and so on could lead to flooding in low-lying communities. And so our best answer would be B. Now, the final statement says, as global temperatures continue to increase. So notice we have taken out B and D. So the possible answers for this last section would either be C or A. So, as global temperatures continue to increase, would that lead to rising carbon dioxide levels and a resulting temperature change? Now, notice that statement starts with as global temperatures continue to increase. So, our answer could not be C because, again, the carbon dioxide levels would actually affect the temperature change and not the other way around. So, our only answer that could be used in that scenario would be A. So as global temperatures continue to increase, yes, rise in sea levels and loss of beaches can be observed in many locations around the world. And that is how we would approach a question of that nature. So that was quite a mouthful. And so we want to encourage you to continue practicing, and good luck on your examinations.